Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. I'm excited that you and all of your parts have taken time to be with me and all of my parts. If you are a coach, a client, a therapist, if you are in business or education, and you're curious about the IFS model, you are in the right place. Now, let's see what happens on today's podcast. Hey everyone, today's episode is with Bruce Hersey. He is a well-known and adored certified IFS therapist who integrates EMDR with IFS. On the day we recorded this podcast, I accidentally scheduled two podcasts at the same time. I had a hard time with that. I felt a ton of shame, and I kept hearing a part say, "You don't make mistakes ever. You're not allowed to make mistakes." I also noticed a part that believed I would never be forgiven, that both of my guests would know how awful and incompetent I am and would refuse to meet with me today or ever again. So Bruce and I processed that at the beginning of this interview, and then it comes up at the end. I thought about editing it out because there were parts of me that were like, yeah, obviously we're going to edit that out. But then I thought, nah, I'm going to leave it in there. Bruce and I, he's really, really funny. And even if, as I'm listening to it, there's times that I'm cracking up laughing that it seems like, why am I laughing? But I think it's because he makes these facial expressions and he's talking about something really serious, but there's just something about it, I don't know. So I'm laughing a lot. Bruce and I are kind of all over the place where it's really, really funny. And then we talk about really smart stuff. So I think that's Bruce. He's just this really intelligent, funny person. So, for example, we talk about foods from Pennsylvania and we talk about the brain and energy and space time. We talk about football and we talk about alternating bilateral stimulation. We talk about ego states and we talk about UFOs. About EMDR, he says it is an incomplete model. About IFS, he says it is the theory of everything. About self, he says if it's a part and not just a memory that's being targeted in EMDR, and we're targeting a part, then who might be here to relate to the part? I thought that was really interesting. It's a super fun ride. I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi. Bruce, I think I'm going to lose my mind.
Uh-oh.
I feel like this is very humbling. I feel like I'm not someone who makes these mistakes. And yeah, when I realized, so at 11 o'clock, I was sitting here waiting for you and I was like, this is weird. And probably about 11:15, I was like, wait. And I looked through your emails and realized you said one. And well,
Anyway, we're
that explains
here.
that. We're here. It took us a really long time to get here, didn't it?
Yes, it did. So, now I have a part that would accuse you of having a part that did not really want to meet with me, that's undermining this, that wants to fuck this up.
I'm going to have to edit that out.
Okay, yeah. Could you edit that out? That's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, there's not any parts of me that feel that way at all. Anything, I was excited about this and was so horrified that I messed this up. So
I'm so glad we got to do it, and I'm only kidding about my accusatory part. Happy to do this. Honored that you asked me to do it, and listened to a couple of your previous podcasts, and man, I'm sure that you're an amazing therapist, but
Aw.
The thought comes to mind that you missed your calling. Like, you're really good at this.
that means so much to me. And I'm going to take that in because for the past 2 hours, I've had a hard time with the mess up. And so it means a lot to me to hear you say that. I don't,
Well,
Yeah, I feel like there's part, I'm gonna start crying. I feel like there's parts of me that don't allow me to ever mess up. And so for me to have messed something up feels like it just feels really terrible.
Well, why don't we sit with that just for a second or so? And I just feel so honored that your parts would choose this unusual opportunity to mess up with me. I am honored. I am doubly honored now.
Hmm.
So somehow your parts were able to do it here with me because it doesn't matter at all.
Thank you for saying that. And you know what's it's funny is I'm from Maryland originally, and my dad and stepmom live in Baltimore, and you have a little bit of a mid-Atlantic accent. So just hearing your voice actually is really soothing to me because of your accent.
Well, that's funny. I didn't even know that I had an accent.
I know. Well, when I was in Maryland, I would have told you that I don't have an accent. And then when I moved away,
Okay.
and
Okay.
yeah, so it's actually your slight accent is very soothing to me.
Awesome. Well, then I'll just keep doing
You should.
it.
So, Bruce, thank you for just holding space for me. I really appreciate that. It feels really good. Why don't you tell everybody where you are in the world and what you see when you look outside your window?
Well, part of my world is a big part of my world has been this office that I'm sitting in. It's my private practice office, and I love it. This office is my home away from home, and it is the coolest office. I got a lot of space. It's a big room. I got these big, two big 3-seater sofas and 1, 2, 3 chairs, and plus my big wraparound desk and swivel chair. And I've got like 3 big windows facing the road and 1 window facing the other. I'm on a corner of a building on the 2nd floor, and like lots of light comes in, so that I have to kind of filter it out a little bit with some filtery kind of blinds. But I'm in this sort of right at the edge of where the neighborhood, there's like a residential neighborhood meets like a business zone. But there's lots of trees around, and then I can see mountains in the distance.
Oh, tell us about the mountains. That
Well,
was
this
good. I
is,
sort of get the fix. It's a little bit of like a little bit of a city, but it's residential, and then there's mountains in the
yeah,
background. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So we might hear occasional traffic noise, because I'm right on a kind of a fairly busy road, which is sort of soothing because it's usually not too loud unless it's like a loud motorcycle or big truck or something. But I just think of that as like EMDR. It's like it goes back and forth, it's alternating bilateral stimulation that's just constantly in the background. But anyway, the mountains, they're not like Rocky Mountains or North Carolina mountains. We still call them mountains. Some people might call them hills, but they're the Allegheny Mountains, and they're pretty nice. Right now, they're kind of like grayish blue because it's sort of like it was a grayish morning that's starting to brighten up, and we're
Mm.
going to have a sunny afternoon here.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think that we've told anybody, but you're in Pennsylvania. I don't think we've said that.
Oh, I should have said
Yeah,
Pennsylvania, right? I should have said Altoona, Pennsylvania. Yeah,
Altoona. So where is
Altoona.
Altoona in Pennsylvania?
Well, if you imagine, if you can picture the state outline of Pennsylvania, some people can actually picture that, if they have a geography mind. But if that were a dartboard, the bullseye would be Altoona, the epicenter, like right in the middle.
Yeah.
We're far from Pittsburgh. We're far from Philadelphia. Not even close.
Do you have, so I have two questions. Do you like football? And if so, which team do you root for? And are you by any water?
I
Is there,
vote for the Democrats. Uh,
I
and
always say vote.
and
I don't know why.
uh,
My husband
and
laughs at me. I'm like,
and
who
I
are you voting for this week?
and I root for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
They're a little closer than the Philadelphia Eagles, but also root for Penn State. Tomorrow is a big day for Penn State. So Penn State is very close. That's about a 40-minute drive from here.
Okay.
So there's a lot of Steeler fans. There's a lot of Penn State fans here, and if you move here, it's hard to resist. It becomes it just enters into your system.
Yeah. Do you eat any weird? Well, they wouldn't be weird for you, but what's the like good Pennsylvania food that if someone was coming to Pennsylvania, they need to eat? They need to eat a Pennsylvania food.
The first thing that comes to mind is that a lot of people who come here, when they order a salad, like a chicken salad or something, don't realize that they're going to get fries on their salad.
Okay.
Do you get fries on your salad? When
No.
you order like a grilled chicken salad or something, most places, I guess other places in which I didn't even realize because I probably didn't eat many salads before I moved here, but if you order a grilled chicken salad, you're probably going to get fries on it.
Okay, do you mean like lettuce salad or you mean like chopped up chicken
Yeah,
salad with
lettuce,
mayonnaise?
like a actual salad with lettuce, tomatoes, grilled chicken and French fries.
On top of the salad.
Yeah, in the salad, right
In
in
the
the
salad.
salad. Yeah, yeah.
I've never heard that before.
And
That's
then there's
exciting.
like if you get even closer to Pittsburgh, so they'll put fries like even in your sandwich. Like if you order like a deli sandwich or something, there's places that Primanti Brothers is famous for it. You get fries right in your sandwich.
When I come to Maryland, and I'm going to come somewhere in Pennsylvania and get some fries in my salad or
Yeah,
sandwich. I think it would be better in a sandwich than
you
on my
do.
salad. I don't know.
Well, you haven't.
Okay.
You really need to try the salad.
Okay. I'm open for it. I'm
Yeah.
open. Do you slip EMDR verbiage in regular conversations like you did earlier? Like at the
Um,
dinner table when you're eating your French fry salad?
depends on who I'm with. Probably. If it was somebody who I thought could appreciate it, then I guess I probably would.
Were you trained in EMDR first or IFS
Yes,
first? EMDR first.
EMDR first.
Okay. What made you get trained in IFS after EMDR? Like, why wasn't EMDR the one and only thing?
Well, so I was trained in EMDR pretty early. So back in the late 90s was when I got trained in EMDR, 96, 97. I got my EMDR training. Well, it was fabulous. I just loved it. I was so curious about how does this work? I gotta know. So I did a lot of, personal research to try to find out what's actually going on, which is still unresolved for the masses. But then I discovered IFS by accident. So it was accidental. And that was at the Psychotherapy Networker conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed my licensure credits. So, I signed up for the Networker conference, and it's like a 3-day thing. All I really needed was 2 days. So the last day was Sunday, and I had parts that thought I could go home. And I had parts that thought, but I paid for this.
Yeah.
And I looked at the menu, and nothing looked good. nothing looked good. So I just kind of picked one that I thought, well, this is vaguely interesting. And it was Mike Elkin
Okay.
subbing for Dick Schwartz
Oh my gosh.
because Dick was sick. He had a heart problem or something that year. And so he was
Oh.
scheduled to appear and couldn't. Mike Elkin was doing let's consult with the therapist using IFS on their most difficult stuck cases. So I probably read a couple of Networker articles, but I, didn't even kind of put two and two together. So I didn't know anything what I was going to see there. And it was just incredible, of course. Mike was, very engaging and brilliant. I just thought, wow, this is amazing, and I got to learn this. So that was my introduction. That was like 2004, I believe, or somewhere around there.
Okay. And then you've done all 3 levels at this point.
Yeah. So what I thought about IFS was this explains everything.
How is that different than what you thought about EMDR?
Well, I ran into problems with EMDR, and then after running into problems a few times with it, sort of put it on the shelf. And not that I thought, oh, I don't like EMDR anymore, but it's like if you like it doesn't work or some problems happen, and you think, well, okay, let me do it without this, and I just started doing without it. And sort of got in the habit of doing other things.
Yeah.
And then when I learned IFS, even just that much of IFS, just from reading and having seen Mike Elkin's workshop, it explained why EMDR wasn't working when it didn't work.
And why was that?
Well, because of parts, activation. So primarily that. And
Yeah.
so most people who know EMDR and know IFS kind of have figured that out. But EMDR is a great approach, and it is a really good set of tools. But as a model, I think it's incomplete. And I think IFS seems to be much more of a universal, elegant model that isn't just a psychotherapy approach, but it's really more of a model that you can use to figure out, what's going on and where you're at.
So then when you came back from the Networker conference and you started looking into IFS, and then let's fast forward to you being trained, how did you figure out how to integrate these two models? Because it sounds like that's what you do now, and you do workshops and conferences on integration. I know there's a lot of talk about it, so I'm curious how you figure that out.
Well, truth be told, I wasn't so much then kind of doing the integrated model. I was actually had a part that wanted to introduce EMDR therapists to IFS.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
what better way to show the EMDR therapists that there was a model that you could use that could show you where you're at when you're stuck and what needs to happen next to get unstuck.
Got it. That makes sense to me.
And I still wasn't really going back to EMDR. Please edit this out. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. I'm not going to tell anybody.
I'm kidding. This is our little secret.
Yeah, I won't tell anybody.
Okay.
That's really interesting.
Subsequently, I have gotten back to doing EMDR and using an integrated approach.
So, one of the things that I send out these Word documents that have just information about the podcast, and you did an amazing job of filling it out. And one of the things that you said is that IFS became the theory of everything for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
See?
yeah, yeah. I want to get, and then this is what, I'm going to read what else you said, and I want you to talk about this. Also shaped and encouraged my spiritual side, as well as helped me heal some inner wounds and become a better person over the years. Sorry, you can't say something like to me that to me and think I'm not going to use it.
Uh-oh.
I want to hear about those beautiful. It's beautifully stated, and if you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear more
Yeah.
about what that means.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a spiritual person, but not a religious person, even though, there's Catholicism on my mother's side, and there was, church going and communion, in the early years. For a long time, I didn't. There was no shape to whatever was spiritual within me, and so I didn't resonate with anything. And so just
Yeah.
the IFS, has a spiritual side to it, and it just, I think it helped me to kind of accept that there is spirituality, and that, and I can it takes, it can give it some form, mentally, within me, and a way to see it in others and in the world. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a spiritual side, and it just really, it gave me something to kind of hold on to there.
Yeah. I was raised Catholic too, and so I think that sometimes it's unfortunate because Catholicism has this beautiful contemplative. That's not what I was taught though, right? So now,
Neither was I.
yeah, but there is this beautiful. I've read this book
Yeah,
called The Seven Sacred Practices, I think is what it's called. And it was all about contemplation and mindfulness. And it was written by this nun. And it was the first time I was like, whoa, why didn't I hear this growing up? This was
yeah,
amazing. It was
yeah,
amazing. So you were talking about bilateral stimulation. So I'm going to jump back to
yes,
that.
sure.
Tell me what that means and why it works with
Okay, that's
EMDR.
the big mystery for one. So in other words, this is
Okay.
not. So this is, there's still uncertainty, although there are various people, and there's a whole lot of studies about it, like what exactly is this doing in the brain. But anyway, so just firstly, bilateral stimulation is really, I would say, shorthand for alternating bilateral stimulation, which means one side to the other, back and forth.
And we're talking about the brain, right? Or
Well,
or the
some
sides of the
people would
body
say,
or
some people would say that,
okay.
but I don't necessarily agree with that. But it is side to side in relation to the person, left side to right side and back again, right? And that stimulus can be visual. So it started out with the name eye movement reprocessing, right? Desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. The EM is eye movement, and what that meant was waving, the two finger, you know, uh,
Bruce is
Boy,
waving his fingers back and
Boy
forth,
Scout,
by the way. Oh,
Boy
like a two,
Scout
like the
sign. Yeah,
oh, okay.
like that, and so getting the client's eyes to track back and forth, side to side, while they were focused on the trauma that was being reprocessed. And so the stimulation, the alternating bilateral stimulation, would be that visual tracking back and forth. Later, many other forms of alternating bilateral stimulation have been found to be effective, and that would include auditory, so a sound that would move back and forth from one side to the other, like the traffic
Right, yeah.
under my office here, or through headphones, some kind of either recorded or electronic beep 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 beep, and also tactile. stimulation. So you could tap, alternatingly. The therapist can tap the person, on one side or the other. You could do any part of the body, really, like knees, thighs, shoulders, hands, so that I sometimes do, the temples, or the client, can do that for themselves. And also electronic devices have been developed where, a pulse, like a vibrating pulse signal, can be sent to a tapper that's one hand and then the other, and you can place those little tapper vibrators anywhere on the body. So you could just hold them in your hands, or you could set them on your thighs or whatever. But the idea is, this signal, this something is being tracked. It's moving back and forth, and you can control the rhythm of that, the speed of that. You can up tempo it, or you can slow it down. Do, 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 do.
Like
And they
Pong.
develop. What's that? Yes,
Like Pong.
exactly. Like Pong, exactly. So that would be alternating bilateral. If you watched, Pong, that would be a form of alternating bilateral stimulation. Exactly. And they develop like a light bar, which has like these digital, like LED lights that kind of zip back and forth.
What's the thought? So the person will tell their traumatic story or one memory, right? Isn't it like something really specific? And then,
It has
or does it
been.
have to be, or
It
does
has,
it?
well, according to the standard definition of EMDR, the ideal focus and target is a specific memory. So you specifically target a memory, but that's what changes in my mind when you introduce IFS.
How so?
Right from the get-go.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so when you introduce IFS to it, I would say that we're no longer targeting a memory as such. What we're targeting is a part who has a memory, or is in the memory, or is burdened by the memory, but it's a part actually who we're targeting.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, that changes everything, by the way. So once you conceive of it as a part, then that introduces the possibility of something relational immediately,
Yeah.
rather than secondarily, maybe somewhere down the road. Immediately, if we're talking about an entity or a being or a part or an ego state, then immediately there is an other. There's something in there, someone in there who one can relate to, and then therefore that introduces the possibility that who might be here to relate to that is self. And it's important that it is, because if it isn't, EMDR isn't going to work very well. Bingo.
Wow. Wow. I love that. It was really beautifully said. And that's interesting that it's like just the idea that we have parts, like elicit the idea that there is a self, like we're not just parts, that just
Mm-hmm.
by being a part, it's that like, okay.
Interestingly enough, if you really tease apart, the standard definition of EMDR, Francine Shapiro, God bless her soul, who died this year, actually built some things into the structure of EMDR, which is a very structured thing in comparison to IFS. We're a little loosey-goosey, in the IFS world. I would say maybe I would say more organic and systemic, spiritual, in a more direct, way. But anyway, Francine, in her wisdom, actually built in some things that, if we look at them from an IFS perspective, we could say she's not crystal clear about it, but you can see that these things really are a way to try to introduce self-presence
Okay. Are you talking about
into the
yeah.
structure of the procedure. But it never quite comes out in that way exactly. If you look at those things as ways to bring self in, then you can use them even more effectively.
So I don't know EMDR. I know a little bit about it, but that's not something I've been trained in. So people that have been trained in it, will they know what you're talking about when you say that?
They do.
They do. Okay.
They catch the fever, and they want to go and get IFS training, which is really, makes my part who started this mission very happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But see, what has happened in the EMDR field over time is everybody who does EMDR has encountered the same problems. And so over time, and this is why I say it's an incomplete model, EMDR has never accounted for in a direct way ego states, which really is another word for parts. So what has happened over time is that you cannot go to an EMDR conference without hearing the word ego state and without encountering workshop after workshop after workshop about how to deal with ego states. And so EMDR has really always needed a supplementary ego state theory to kind of help smooth out some rough spots. And IFS is by far the best ego state model out there. And one reason that is because of the self, the very straightforward concept of self and what exactly self is, in IFS. There's many other ego state models and ego state therapies that don't quite spell that out in such a powerful and clear way. And so even those models then fall short as the appropriate supplemental ego state model to marry with EMDR, because there really needs to be a self.
Yeah. And so that's like what EMDR is missing. But what about what I hear, and I think a lot of people hear this too, is that when people have trauma, which I mean, I feel like most people do, but say if they have trauma, they want EMDR. Like, I think that's what it's like. Oh, you had this trauma experience, you need EMDR. It's lickety split, quick, quick, quick,
Yeah.
quick relief.
And that is potentially true, and it is more true when there is a single specific traumatic experience. But when there are, multiple traumatic experiences of various types, and then there's an overlay of developmental and attachment issues, which almost always there is.
Yeah.
Then somehow you have to account for that. And EMDR, that's where EMDR falls short as a model, because it doesn't really direct you, doesn't give you the information. Well, then what do you do with all of that? It's just that once you find the target and the person is prepared and they're ready to address that target, then you can use EMDR. But it doesn't provide a detailed roadmap of how do you get all that done.
Right.
And that's why we need some other guidance in that. And IFS really can provide that. for
Right. So
us.
for single episode trauma, that's what we usually call it, right? Single
Yeah,
episode
yeah,
trauma,
right.
EMDR is good for that single episode trauma. And not that IFS
Yes,
wouldn't be good for that either, but
right.
yeah.
Well, and now EMDR, thanks to IFS, I believe it can be useful for issues, rather than just episodes of trauma.
Okay.
We can actually target parts per se to heal them. And in particular, one thing that we didn't have in EMDR a full way to do was we can target and reprocess, starting with protectors. There's nothing in EMDR per se to account for or address how to deal with protectors, let alone like process them or process them, or start with them and proceed all the way to wherever it needs to go. Now I think that can be done with a little help from our IFS friends.
I love that because if I'm someone that has had a lot of trauma, then I probably have a dissociative or numbing protector. And then so then it sounds like you could do some EMDR on the
With the
numbing with
protector.
that part. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that goes back to the bilateral stimulation,
Right.
which I want to talk about again.
Okay.
So is there so if someone is listening to this podcast right now, is there a way for them to do that on themselves? Or is there how would that work if they're like, okay, I'm noticing that I've got a lot of numbing, I'm numb for various reasons. And then what could they do something to
Well, there are
deal?
things that they can. There are things that they can do, but I would not recommend, attempting to do self-healing with protectors. Protectors can blend. They will blend. Then there's no self, and so where are we getting self from? Well, if we have a therapist, presumably we can get self energy from the therapist.
Mm,
So I would not recommend any kind of self healing with protectors for that reason, because they can blend, and then there's no self energy to inject into the process.
got it. Got that. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
So we would want, to be able to count on, reliable self energy in our environment, so that we can say, yeah, you know what, it's okay for this protector to be here and to be blended, and that person over there, they've got self energy, and they can, kind of be present with this, and help do something therapeutic with this protector.
Is there something about bilateral stimulation that calls up self?
Well, that's an interesting thought right there. I think that is quite possible. And I think that I was just talking to some consultees in the last couple of days. I have a couple of ongoing IFS informed EMDR consultation groups, and one of the people was saying that is exactly, since she started doing this with her clients, that is exactly what she sees happening. That
Wow.
immediately she is seeing more self presence in her clients as soon as she introduces the bilateral stimulation. So
That's
yeah, I say yes. And if we're getting back to the bilateral stimulation, one thing I didn't say when you brought it up was, how does it work? Because I do have an idea about how it works and why. And it's been said, a couple of people have proposed this, and I think very early on, I think Bessel van der Kolk was one of the people who was talking about this specific limbic structure called the hippocampus, this seahorse. And that structure has a couple of different jobs, but one of the jobs that structure has is to determine where the heck we are in time and space. So it's our GPS, it's our space-time GPS that says, Bruce, right now you are here in your office and it's Friday afternoon. Instead of, there in the alley with your father who was emotionally abusing you. If something goes wrong with what the hippocampus does for us, guess what's going to happen? Somehow, our mind-body system is going to respond to one here and now as though we're in some other here and now. So we want to get that structure online. We want to get that structure working. And another thing that we can say about a space-time calculator or a space-time regulator is that it would track things. So like if left and right bring us into the present, in order to track something, it's going to bring us into the present. If we have to track it, from one side to another, we're engaging a space-time process because we're tracking something that's moving. So it makes sense that we're engaging by doing something like that we're actually engaging the hippocampus. But here's another thing that the hippocampus does. The hippocampus, and this gets to self. The hippocampus basically, in studies that the U.S. Navy did or funded back in time with rats in mazes, is they did experiments, and what they found is that the hippocampus is responsible for space-time mapping, and that if it's functioning, it enables what's called allocentric mapping as opposed to what? Egocentric mapping. What is allocentric mapping? Allocentric mapping is the ability to perceive oneself in an environment and hold one's own perspective within that environment, but also to be able to perceive the perspective of any other place in that map. Can we bridge from that would represent self as opposed to egocentric mapping, which would be apart?
I just got shivers. Yeah. I love the way you explain that. It's almost like what we're seeing through, like with the with the rats, like what we're seeing with physical science is explaining what we're talking about with IFS. Like and I love that because it just feels like it just validates all of that stuff as being really real. Because when you have an IFS experience, it's like, even me earlier, I think I think after this day is done and I can have some space, I could probably tell you that there's a part of me that wasn't in 45-year-old Tammy who lives in New Hampshire and is going to talk to Bruce, who's a really nice guy. There was probably a part of me that felt probably the number 7 is coming up and I was going to get in trouble and this was going to be all my fault. And, that there was a part of me that was existing in a different time in feeling
Exactly.
all those feelings. And so that was my experience. And then to hear that that's my experience, and then to hear that that experience makes like scientific sense.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That it's not just
Absolutely.
some like hokey, weird thing.
Right. And here's another weird thing about that is that there's a certain kind of gravity that pulls you back to that point in space-time.
Okay. What does that mean?
Gravity is energy.
Okay.
So if there's some kind of energy that zaps you and you take it in as a burden, that's gravity. And
Wow.
it's gonna pull you back to that point in space time every time until that gravity can be released. So it's energy which holds together ego states or parts in their burdened form.
Okay, you're blowing my mind. So is that one of the reasons why, like after we do a piece of work, we'll say like we feel lighter, like we feel physically lighter?
Yeah, and
Wow.
more spacious.
More spacious. All right, that's so weird. Bruce, we have other things to talk about, but we're gonna run out of time.
I know. So this was fun though.
This was
So
really
thanks
fun.
thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And you're
Thank
just
you.
so good at this. Wow.
Thank you. Can we meet again and talk about other things?
Absolutely. That would
That'd be
be
great.
fun too.
So, on that line, though, of what we were just talking about, I always end with if you weren't doing all the amazing stuff you're doing, what would you do instead? Like, what would you do fun? I think your answer ties into what we've just been talking about a little bit.
There's so many
Yeah.
things, right? You can see that I could be if I had a different type of brain, like a mathematical brain, I could be a physicist,
I kind of think you do a little
right?
bit, though. I think you
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just love like ancient civilizations. So like I could be an archaeologist, and I just love to explore like the wisdom and the amazing accomplishments of ancient cultures. Is just that's something that blows my mind.
Hmm.
And just weird and unexplained things blow my mind. So I could be a UFO researcher, or you know I could hunt for Bigfoot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm. Do you have any experiences with UFOs, or do you know anybody that has UFO experiences?
I've had clients who in trances, in hypnotic trances, have reported and described abduction experiences. But personally, I have not, although, yes, I have very close people in my life who I won't name, who have reported some very interesting UFO encounters.
Interesting. I like it. Kind of freaks me out though. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
interesting, but I'm a little bit, If people want to contact you, how would you like them to contact you? And do you have any openings in your consult? Because you do a lot of consultation. So, two
Love to
questions.
do consultation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, consultations for EMDR,
For
IFS.
EMDR or IFS separately, or the combined, integrated form. So I have groups that are IFS consultation groups, and I have IFS informed EMDR groups, and then individual consultation for any of that. My website is brucehersey.com. I also have started some online. I'm teaching workshops, and then I have some online workshops at emdrifs.com.
Great.
And I have a Facebook page that is dedicated to IFS Informed EMDR. And if everybody who's listening to this could go to that Facebook page called IFS Informed EMDR and like it. That'd be fabulous.
Awesome. I'm writing that down and I will put it in the show notes. So everyone listening, go do that right now. I love it. Great. Bruce, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you liked this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFSTammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time. Today's episode was sponsored by Brighter Vision. What's the point of having a beautiful website if it doesn't attract the clients you want to see? As the worldwide leaders of website design for therapists, Brighter Vision sees this issue happen way too often. A nice-looking website doesn't equate to a successful website. The truth is, your current website might even be turning off potential clients. That's where Brighter Vision comes in. Brighter Vision's team of website designers will create a website that is centered around attracting and retaining your ideal client so that you can have a nice-looking website as well as a successful one. Better yet, Brighter Vision is offering $100 off exclusively for listeners of the One Inside podcast. To take advantage of this offer, simply go to brightervision.com/inside. Again, that's brightervision.com/inside.